Hello everybody, Trevor Blake again, and this time I want to talk a little bit about this age of transformation we find ourselves in. I don't think there's anybody alive today who doesn't feel that we're going through a transformative period. It's probably surprised the heck out of most people. But sages, for decades and in some cases centuries of different disciplines have been predicting this age. And I follow a few because over the years I've come to trust them because of their accuracy, and I do it. I'm a pragmatic businessman. I do it because it's interesting, it's sort of a hobby of mine, but also I much prefer to know when change is coming than to be surprised by change. It's much easier to handle decisions in business if you know that it's a healthy work environment or it's an unhealthy work environment at the moment. And that's really, I'm not alone in that. I know there are hedge funds and multi-billionaires that pay tens of thousands of dollars to follow these same people that I follow, and to stay ahead of the game, to be at the forefront of change is how opportunity is made. But for those who don't know this change is coming and they don't understand all of this transformation, it can be pretty panicky. It can be a time of fear and panic, basically. And so that's why I've decided to talk about it. As a pragmatic businessman, there's always a risk that people will laugh at you for talking about these more esoteric things. But I don't think that we have a right to hold on to it. Just because we have some knowledge doesn't mean that it's not right to share that knowledge. And I think it's good to share, because this transformational period is so dramatic. It's going to affect every aspect, every single aspect of how we live and work. And that will frighten most people, but for me, it makes me as excited as a little kid. I mean, I'm up there in years now, but I'm so excited about this. It's like I feel like almost being born again because of the opportunities that are coming our way, and the type of opportunities and the culture around those opportunities. Everything's changing. I think I should perhaps explain exactly what the change is before I talk about what the change means. Okay, so everything in life is energy. And as I've said before, and as people know, energy moves in waves or cycles. And because we long ago lost, or most people lost the ability to communicate telepathically, we have to use language, so we give everything labels and we make everything seem more complicated than it is. It's a lot easier to visualize a wave than it is to talk about it. But we give them, an up and down, or a yin and yang, or a masculine and feminine. Okay. Now, the danger of talking masculine and feminine is we start to get into gender issues or gender discussions, and that's not really the purpose, because I'm half male, half female. The only thing that makes a difference is that I have an XY chromosome as opposed to a double X. Of course, once I was born and everyone recognized, oh, that's a man, then I become a product of my environment, and I'm treated as such, and I treat myself as such, and so I become more male energy than female energy. And the opposite happens to most females, depending on their environments. They become a product of how they're taught and the belief systems they're given and the way they're treated in society. They become more on the feminine side. So let's talk a little bit about the energies themselves. So we'll talk masculine energy, and we'll try and give it a picture, a sort of gender picture. So masculine energy is surprisingly slow. And I'm sure there's lots of women watching this going, yes, finally, finally someone admits the truth. Masculine energy is really slow, and it's linear if you visualize it. And you can imagine a man in an overalls with a clipboard in his hand saying, okay, tick 1, done, tick 2, done. It's all very methodical. It's all very logical. It's reasoned out. It's analyzed. This is the masculine type of energy. Think of straight lines, railroads and freeways and runways. Very linear, very slow, very methodical. And this masculine energy is dominated for a long, long time, centuries. Prior to that, it was female energy, and of course we switch because it's a cycle. Okay, so we had the female energy centuries and centuries ago, where most of the world's most successful leaders were female, and most of the world's most successful armies were also feminine armies. And so that segues into, okay, what's the difference between masculine and feminine? So feminine energy isn't what people think it is. So feminine energy is not linear and slow. It's really fast, and it's spiraling. It's breathless. So you hardly have time to think. And so from a business perspective, this is very, very important, because it means that we live in a work environment where it's no longer acceptable to identify an issue, call a meeting, gather a team, analyze it to death, and try and find a decision by consensus. Those days are gone. It's dead. Now this happens so fast that if you get caught up in the spiral, then you can probably anticipate the opportunity or the issue before it even happens, and you make an intuitive decision and you prepare to adapt quickly. And that's feminine energy. Very quick moving, very short spaced, but from a sacred geometry standpoint, 140 points as opposed to 40, so it's very powerful. And a lot of people, I read some silly articles sometimes just to challenge myself, and one of the silliest articles I read recently said that, you know, this move to feminine energy is going to mean there's going to be more healing and more nurturing. Well, if the same person that wrote that article would study anthropology, they would find if they went back to the last time that the earth was dominated by feminine energy, those female warriors were absolutely ruthless. They did not stop to pick up their own wounded, and they did not take captives. They were merciless, unforgiving, and this female energy is unforgiving too. There is no time with female energy to stop and go back and rethink. It has to happen quickly, it has to happen. And if you're not with it, you will get left behind. And so how does that play out in the business world? Well, for me, it changes everything. So if you doubt me, then just look at recent statistics. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about how quickly things change, the shortness of things, okay, the longevity. So in the 1950s, the average age of a company was 75 years, and they were all household names. Only 4% of women started their own company. Today, the average age of a company is just under 20 years. And 50% of startups are started by women. In the next few years, I anticipate the average age of a company will be very short indeed, because it keeps having to adapt to keep up with technological changes, because the swirling energy is one of innovation and creativity. And I would think that most of the successful companies, the Googles and the Amazons of the future, the leaders will not be a Jeff or a Richard or anything like that, or a Paige. The leaders, a Sergio, whatever they're called, the leaders will be female. And I can see it happening already, because all the studies that have looked at how did businesses recover from 2008, they show that female-led businesses recovered twice as fast as male-led businesses. And they also show that the female startups are many times more profitable than male startups. So these are really exciting times. So if you've been relying on your feminine energy because you're a product of your environment and you think of yourself as feminine, you've got a huge advantage during this transformational change. If you're a male and you've been relying on your male energy in the old linear, slow world, you need to change. You need to change the way you think. You need to change the way you structure your company. You need to change the way that you make decisions. You need to change the way that you rely on your intuition if you want to be successful in this new world. Many years ago, I think it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, I put a course together. It's more of an experience than a course, because you never actually finish it. It's constantly evolving. And it's called Transformation, and it was in anticipation of this. Because for many years, I've been lucky in life. I've been surrounded by absolutely brilliant women, powerful, determined fighters, but also with incredible intuition. And every time I didn't pay attention to their intuition, you know, it cost me, I mean, physically and financially. So I learned my lesson pretty quickly. If I don't start paying attention to their intuition, I'm going to be in trouble. And so then I was fascinated with how do we develop that type of intuition. And so, you know, I've studied and come up with a number of tools and techniques that can help the slow, linear Neanderthal male like me to catch up a little bit and to make more intuitive decisions and have confidence in doing that. And it's impossible at this point to, I think, foretell what the business world will look like in a few years' time. But it will look incredibly different to the one we have now. And people are going to have to buck up and change their ideas. And, you know, I read some frightening statistics. You know, 50% of startups are female-led. Female-led companies are more successful than male-led companies now. And yet 98% of venture capital last year was invested in male-led companies. It's kind of dumb. And it has to change. And it'll change for the better. And this energy brings with it changes in every aspect of life. So we're going to see more female leadership, more state leaders. I mean, isn't it interesting to think while we're going through this COVID-19 thing, that the 5 countries with the lowest death per million of the virus are all led by female state leaders, all 5. It's not by chance. And it's because instead of grandstanding and bashing egos and fight, trying to take advantage of a crisis to boost your political reputation. The female leaders just got on with the job. And I think that speaks volumes. So in my pragmatic world of entrepreneurship, what I'm looking for in myself is the ability to make more intuitive decisions. I'm changing my negotiation style because all the latest surveys and studies show that females actually make better negotiators when competing interests are involved. And that's the nature of negotiation, isn't it? I think that goes against what most people think. Most people think men make better negotiators. But actually, when I've been negotiating with a male counterpart or teams of men against me, it is against. It's been like a trench warfare. It's exhausting. When I'm negotiating with a female counterpart, it usually goes really quickly and smoothly, and there's nothing much to think about because they've already made it fair. They've already made the compromise to bring competing interests together. And it's a pleasant experience. I just had it recently. I just negotiated, well, I call it a negotiate. It was a no-brainer for me, but a new company led by a female. It's her idea, and she's the CEO. She went out and got investment, and they provide a service that I want. And I was expecting it to be pretty expensive, and she impressed me so much. There was no doubt I was going to go with that company. But then the price was very reasonable because she could understand the size of my company and where we're going, and that if we work together now in a reasonable way, it's likely we'll do much bigger contracts in the future. I don't get that when I negotiate with men. They have to win, and it puts me in a position where I feel I have to win. So anyway, it's all changing, and this is the great transformational age of rebalance. And all it is the heavy linear male energy has gone too far. So we're trying to rebalance. And so it goes back to female, and it'll go too far female over the next several hundred years, so you don't have to worry about it. And then it'll come back and it'll be equilibrium again for a while. And this happens through the ages. It's a very exciting time, but you need to know it's happening. And hopefully what I've said here will be of value to you. And you can, if you want to know more, go to my website, trevorgblake.com. Lots of articles and podcasts on this sort of thing, as well as the courses. And if it's of interest to you, then start digging into it and you'll be fascinated. But more than fascinated, you'll be prepared. And if you're prepared, then it becomes fun and exciting rather than fearful and scary.